BLM has done nothing to lift up the black community and everything to take advantage for themselves. I'm Mr. J, and I want to talk about the national riots that have been going on in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd. Now, I already made a video about the situation with him in Minneapolis, and I'll link it in the description if you want to see it. And in case you haven't seen it, then I'll summarize it. George Floyd was a man of faith who dedicated to his community. He would never have supported the rioting and looting that went on in the aftermath of his death. His family deserves justice, don't get me wrong, but the rioting and looting has been hurting the community. There was even a black bar owner named KB Bala who had his bar looted and burned down by rioters. KB was a former firefighter who just started his own business, but had to push back the opening due to the coronavirus pandemic. And now, just when things seem to be reopening, the BLM comes in, bringing in their own people from out of state, and has them reduce the place to rubble. I'm not even kidding when I say that. The place is completely destroyed. Fortunately, there's been a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for them to rebuild. In less than a week, they've already raised over $1 million. I'll leave a link to it down in the description if you feel like donating, or even just sharing the story on social media. I also want to share the more recent story of a black former police captain named David Dorn, who was shot and killed trying to protect a friend's store in St. Louis. Now, his family has started a memorial fund on Fundly, and I'll link that in the description as well. I've already donated. I hope you'll do the same. Even if you can't donate, then I hope you'll share the story on Facebook or Twitter in order to get the word out. This man, who lived and died protecting his own community, was killed by looters, and his family deserves justice, just like that of George Floyd's. The only difference is that David Dorn was killed by looters, not by police officers. To the BLM, black lives only matter if they sit down, shut up, and follow lockstep with their philosophy of rioting and looting as a form of justice. And this is the problem with the BLM. They don't care about black lives. They only care when they can use it to justify rioting and looting whenever an incident like this occurs. They've been using George Floyd's death as an opportunity to incite violence. They've done nothing but loot stores, burn buildings, and overall cause nothing but pain and destruction to these communities. We've seen this in the past with incidents like that of Michael Brown. Now, what happened was that in 2014, Ferguson, Missouri, Michael Brown was robbing a convenience store with his homies before Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson tried to arrest him. Now, the thing here is that Brown's friends claim that after Wilson allegedly shot him in the back, Brown turned around, got on his knees, put his hands up, and said, "Don't shoot me," before the cop shot him anyway. Now, of course, we've learned that this was a load of BS, and that Brown's homies were lying. From what I remember, Officer Wilson said that he tried to peacefully detain Brown, but that Brown was beating the crap out of him. The officer suffered injuries to his head and other parts of his body. I still remember him describing Michael Brown as a, quote, demon in his eyes. You could tell that the officer was trying very hard to resolve the situation peacefully, but after being beaten almost to death, he was scarred for his life and made the conscious choice to kill Brown. My point with this is that the BLM and the media took the hands up, don't shoot story and ran with it. They didn't bother to assess the credibility of the witnesses. Both they and the big media outlets like CNN took it as gospel truth and spun their narratives around it. The result was exactly the same as what we saw here. Nothing but looting, burning stores, and screwing people out of their jobs, including other blacks. There was even a video of Brown's stepfather trying to start another riot. A similar thing to this all happened almost a year later in Baltimore, when a man named Freddie Gray was arrested for having a knife on him. What happened afterwards is that Freddie Gray, and I'm quoting from the coroner here, nearly had his spine severed, unquote. Now, it's possible that Gray might have been trying to injure himself when he was riding in the back of the police van, but we can't know for sure. What we do know is that he was put into a coma as a result of his injuries, and he died a week later after his arrest. Now, this was it sparked a ton of outrage. Now, the worst part about this is that the mayor at the time, a black woman named Stephanie Rawlings Blake, said on camera, quote, "We are going to give them room to destroy," unquote. Now, when the riots actually started happening, she tried to play that as if it wasn't what she meant. And of course, she did end up condemning the riots later. Regardless, however, the results are still the same. Stores, businesses, and vehicles were looted and burned by the BLM and their supporters. Even a CVS pharmacy was burnt down. There were tons of potentially life-saving medicine in there that was burnt up with the store. This is the purpose of the BLM. They'll take whatever incident that they can find and spin it to fit their rhetoric that all police officers, regardless of their skin color, are evil and that all black men are endangered as seen as threats wherever they go. Now, the problem with that is that most sane people won't see a regular black guy as a threat. If he's walking into a store wearing a hoodie with his hood down, then maybe some folks might get a little nervous, but otherwise, never. If these people want to make it so that black people aren't seen as a threat, they need to stop and wait for all the facts to come out before they start torching all these businesses. Why is it that every time a black man dies at the hands of police officers that there has to be riots and destruction? What purpose does it serve? These people are only here to destroy. They don't care about the facts. What they're doing is giving people a real excuse to be racist. Because when the black community as a whole has a higher rate of crime than any other race, then it only makes sense that people might be afraid that a home or a construction site is going to be burglarized, or that someone, especially other blacks, are going to get shot by these damn gangbangers out in the streets. Look at places like Chicago, look at New York, and tell me that the black-on-black crime isn't higher than the crime rates for other races. Now, it obviously goes without saying that there are plenty of sensible, reasonable black folks who aren't like these freaks, and I'm glad for them. But when the tiniest minority has the loudest voice, all the other voices of reason are drowned out amidst the chaos, especially when outlets like CNN or MSNBC prop them up on their platforms. We need to question what we hear and wait for all the facts before we make our judgments. We need to encourage civil protests when incidents like this happen. And lastly, we need to have groups like the so-called Black Lives Matter movement legally classified as terrorist groups, because they are going out, starting these riots in what they call racial justice. This is not justice. We need to restore and maintain law and order in our country. That's why I'm in favor of setting up state militias, similar to what we had with the Minutemen in the American Revolution. That way, we won't have to wait for the governors to call in the National Guard every time there's an incident like what happened to George Floyd. George deserves justice, but if helping yourself to a free flat screen before burning down the store is your definition of justice, then you're completely insane. That's just my take, though. Tell me what you think down in the comments. I'm Mr. J, and I hope you all stay safe out there, people. Take care, and God bless.